let's talk a little. I mean, obviously, kind of an ugly start for Notre Dame. Something that was sort of reminiscent of some of their early games during the season against, Florida State, Toledo, pretty much every time until the last couple of weeks starting against UNC, North Carolina. They looked a lot better offensively with their tempo out of the bye week, and today was another slow start. I think the first 3 series or so didn't end in points. Navy actually had a 3-0 lead, I think, going into the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken, or right into the second quarter or right before it. But once Notre Dame was able to punch it in for their first score, it was kind of just all Notre Dame from there. And, obviously you can see from the score, if you didn't watch the game, it ended up in a 34-6 thrashing of sorts in the second half. Was pretty much a domination. I think Navy started out with the ball and took a big chunk of time off the clock. I mean, I think Notre Dame got the ball back with like 5 minutes left in the third quarter, but from there on out, it was pretty much, Notre Dame, I think 17-6 the remaining part of the game, or 17-3, which I think was actually the halftime score, ironically enough. So it was 17-3 in both halves. And you'll take that. I mean, I know Cincinnati struggled with Navy a little bit. Navy's not the team that they typically are. I mean, they're 2-7, but they're still gonna play hard every week, and they're an opponent you got to respect just with the way that they control tempo on offense specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at Drew Brees, Mike Tirico, even Brian Kelly, really, if you listen to him on the broadcast, hit the nail on the head that, the thing about Navy is that, the triple option is hard in and of itself, but then it's also hard when you factor in that 2 or 3 teams in college football do it. So, I mean, you're only going to see it once a year at most if you're Notre Dame, and most teams don't even see it once a year. So Navy can I don't know, can sneak up on some people. Obviously, it took Notre Dame a little bit of time to adjust, like you said. Defensively, though, I mean, I think that's as good as you can do against Navy, in my opinion. And obviously, the broadcast made a point to say that Marcus Freeman is coached against Navy. I mean, they play in the American Conference, and he's coached against Navy every year, while he was at Cincinnati. So that probably had something to do with it. Got to be happy with that. And like you said, I think that Navy was a I lost my train of thought. Navy, snuck up on Notre Dame in terms of, the offense couldn't get going. That's the main concern, I guess, is the slow start in terms of, that's the concerning thing here, is that Notre Dame has gotten off to these slow starts. You didn't want to see it against Navy. Usually when you're talking about going 3 and out twice to start the game on offense against Navy, that's a real bad recipe for a game against a team like Navy that controls the clock the way they do. Notre Dame got away with it because they played pretty good defense today.
Yeah, it's funny. I mentioned that on my podcast earlier this week. I mean, by the way, obviously, I mean, you guys know if you follow us on a weekly basis, but my podcast is the Golden Homers podcast along with Mason Plummer. Ben has his own podcast, the Under the Dome podcast, that he puts out on a weekly basis pretty much as well. One of my big things with that, one of my main points of our podcast this week is that I thought that the Notre Dame defense would look well or pretty good against Navy. And I thought it was actually coming at a good time with them being relatively tired. The linebacking core continues to be banged up. I mean, I think Drew White and J.D. Bertrand aren't playing at a 100%. I think it just came out today that Drew White's playing on essentially a torn PCL or close to it. And, obviously they're down 3 linebackers for the season already. So, having Navy, which can be a concern with the way that they block and different things like that on offense, and you don't want to get injured. At the same time, I thought it was a good opponent for the Notre Dame linebackers to kind of do what they do best, and that's attack downhill. They don't necessarily have to go sideline to sideline super well and compete with a bunch of athletes. And I think that played in Notre Dame's hands. So holding Navy to 6 points or no touchdowns, whatever, didn't necessarily surprise me. I think my prediction was 44-14 or something like that. I thought Navy would score 1 in the first half and maybe 1 garbage time touchdown in the second half. And in reality, that's kind of what they did. I mean, Navy drove down the field a few times, but Notre Dame was able to hold in the red zone. And pretty much every time Notre Dame got the ball after their slow start, they moved down the field and put up points on the board.